year of having like a film here. So, that means 3 years of really wanting to be here and not being able to, either for like economic reasons or because we were shooting something. So, I mean, it feels like it's been a long time coming. Yeah, we're very happy to be here, though. I am completely exhausted. But I mean, it's really, really quite nice. It hasn't quite sunk in yet, nor has my body quite just realized that it's not 3 a.m. But I think tomorrow or so I'll be like, yeah, that was awesome.
Simon's always best at describing the movie.
Yeah, I mean, The Guest is a thriller about a family who lost their son about a year prior to the film's events, and a stranger shows up on their doorstep, played by Dan Stevens, and kind of insinuates himself in their lives in various complex ways, and and they kind of start researching him and find out that he's got some kind of sinister motivations for his actions.
Yeah, and the whole thing's kind of done with a sort of 80s stylization, which is kind of important to the whole kind of feeling of the movie. We wanted to do something that kind of represented the type of films that made us want to get into filmmaking in the first place. And, and for us, John Carpenter, for example, is, a big part of it. I mean, I remember the first movie, like when I was a kid, like when my mom asked me, I remember she asked me what my favorite film was, and I told her it was Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins, which is a little bit more lost in history at this point, and Big Trouble in Little China, So that's one of those things that it just, it felt like we had to kind of like pay respect to, the masters that came before in the genre and do a movie that kind of represented that in a way.
You described it as a mixture between Halloween and The Terminator. How does that work? How does that make
Well, it's actually more, it makes more sense than you would actually imagine, because that actually came from, like after You're Next, we were in a situation where I think we were starting to get kind of sick of horror movies because we had, done the VHS series, A Horrible Way to Die, and before that, Simon and I worked separately on different horror projects and stuff, and I think at a certain point we thought maybe we should be doing action or we should try our hand at something else, and it was really when I read this book, Shock Value, and I had Simon read it afterwards, which is all about kind of like the, how horror was changed in the late 70s and 80s by people like John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, and they kind of broke down Halloween in an interesting way. And, the main thing that they went across was how horror kind of went into this, sort of Lovecraftian faceless terror with Alien and Halloween and all that stuff. And, I thought about it. I was like, what is the modern day equivalent of that? Like, maybe it is like kind of trying like the inverted version of that, So the sort of like the basis of it was sort of just saying like, what if Michael Myers, instead of being like this faceless killer, at a distance, what if he's, what if he's a guy living in your house and he's your friend and everything, and we play with the structure of Halloween in some ways and kind of play off of that in very kind of vague ways, and Terminator's mixed in there, but that's kind of a spoiler, but
yeah, I mean, I think the original idea was like this like kind of like slasher with like a like kind of robotic killer, but I think once we kind of started integrating that into like more of like a family drama, it started to make a lot more sense, because initially I was just thinking like that Wes Craven movie with the android, Christy Swanson's like an android next door, Deadly Friend, and that movie is maybe not as big an influence on us as like the other films we mentioned. So it was about then kind of grounding that kind of entertainment, because that's a very entertaining concept, but it was about grounding it in kind of a reality, so that we could like explore it,
So basically Simon was like, okay, this is a ridiculous idea that you're pitching me. Here's a way that this could actually work. And I
just remember that movie Class of 1999 too, with like the substitute teachers that are robots and they have like machine gun arms, and I was like, yeah, I don't know how actually to write that. I think our goal right now is, rather than trying to like have any kind of weird long-term envisioning of ourselves, which of course would definitely not come to pass because you can't predict, your next movie, not to mention your next 10. I think our goal is to just always challenge ourselves and never repeat ourselves, and always keep trying to do, stories that are original in a way that we haven't seen before. And as long as every film we make to us feels better than the one we made before it, we're on the right path. I mean, I would love it if we ended up actually like, making movies that, stand the test of time, but that's I think as close as we get to like a long-term goal. I think the trick is to make your short-term goals, the right ones, not just like I'd like to make some money or, like be famous or something like that, because those are really ultimately kind of like things that have nothing to do with being happy or successful or creatively talented, and I think it's just all about like, the work itself and focusing on that. And I think that's one of the reasons that, we initially started working together, and, because honestly, there weren't that many people that had that kind of ethic. Not to be like immodest, but you know what I mean, whatever.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.